as politicians of all hues, including current South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, jostle for power. A philanthropic organization urges rebels to surrender by dropping hundreds of thousands of flyers from a helicopter above their strongholds in dense rainforests. And an ancient game called Kora promotes unity and tradition in Algeria's mountains. Watch World of Africa at these times on WION World is One.
Yoga, the age-old Indian practice of wellness.
Ayurveda, healing through diet, herbal remedies and meditation.
Two timeless traditions.
Two priceless Indian gifts to the world.
From well-being to perfect health.
How can you incorporate yoga and Ayurveda in daily life? As the world gears up for International Yoga Day,
WION celebrates India's gift to mankind on this special series.
Hello and welcome to the West Asia Post. I am Ghadi Francis, coming to you from Beirut, Lebanon. And this is WION's weekly show where we bring you all things new from the world's most volatile region. Scores of Palestinians have lost their life in a designated safe zone after Israeli airstrikes hit their tents in Rafah city in Gaza Strip, Palestine. This evoked global outcry, and it came days after the ICJ ordered Israeli troops to halt its operations in Rafah city. This will be our focus, and also this episode we focus on the humanitarian crisis in Syria and what the European nations are promising for the country's future. But before all that, let's take a look at what's making the headlines across West Asia.
Hamas group says it will be in complete agreement on a hostage prisoner exchange deal only if Israel stops the war in Gaza. Fire breaks out at West Bank's Ramallah Mark after the Israeli army conducts raids on the city, killing a 20-year-old civilian. Joint US-British overnight airstrikes hit several cities in Yemen, including the capital city of Sana'a and a key port city.
On May 26, makeshift shelter for Palestinians burned under Israeli missile fire in northern Rafah city in Gaza, Palestine. Now this evoked global outrage. But regardless, Israeli troops continued to fire the encampments until May 28th. And even all this happened, the United States still didn't see this as crossing its red line. Our next report brings you all the details.
The horrific incident took place in the north of Rafah city in an area called Tas al-Sultan. This encampment was a designated safe zone where Palestinians who fled Rafah took shelter. The Israeli strike ensued destruction and chaos. Civilians, including children, were burnt alive in their tents.
I woke to the bombing and the children were asleep. I said, thank God they are asleep. I went to the door, slept on the doorstep, and the children were all inside. I heard a strong sound and found smoke rising from the tent. I went into the tent and found the woman was bleeding and the children were bleeding. All the children that were in the tent were wounded. Not one of them came out in one piece.
The strike on Sunday night claimed lives of at least 45 and wounded over 200 displaced Palestinians. By daylight, the camp was a smoking wreckage of tents, twisted metal and charred belongings.
This evening we saw death with our own eyes, and the children that are with me were all wounded. And after all of that, we are now going to the town of Hamad. And even Hamad is not safe. There is even more death than here, so we don't know where to go.
Disturbing images emerged from the site. Burnt civilians running around in the hope of getting aid. An image of a man holding the body of a young child without a head sparked outrage across the world. According to reports, Israel used 2,000-pound bombs for its strike in the area. Earlier this month, the Biden administration halted the shipments of these bombs to Israel. The night after the tragedy, UNRWA commissioner said that he was unable to contact his team on the ground.
I cannot comment on the casualties because we haven't been able to properly communicate with our team on the ground. I saw images. They are deeply disturbing and horrifying. I think we have been clear more than once. There is no safe space in Gaza.
Hamas blamed Israel, claiming that the recent attacks on Rafah signal Netanyahu's defiance of the World Court's ruling.
The timing of carrying out these massacres during the past 2 days is considered a defiance by the neo-Nazi government of the criminal Netanyahu to the International Court of Justice's decision that ordered the cessation of the military operation in the city of Rafah.
Israel continued with its Rafah operations. On Tuesday, Israeli forces carried out strikes on Rafah's Al-Mawasi town. This was another designated safe zone in the area where women and children were sheltered. This incident claimed lives of at least 13 people. Israel sent its tanks to the heart of Rafah for the first time on Tuesday. As the IDF continued with its raids, Palestinian authorities claimed that Rafah's Emirati hospital has been hit. WHO says that Israel's complete incursion in the southern city could paralyze its last functioning hospital.
If the incursion would continue, we would lose the last hospital in Rafah. We will not be able to refer patients to the European Gaza hospital because that is beyond the so-called siege line, etc. So then the whole health sector, 1.9 people, they are dependent on a string of field hospitals along the coast, of which only a few are proper field hospitals.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Sunday's massacre a tragic mistake. He affirmed that Israel will probe into the matter and the nation will ultimately achieve victory in this war.
In Rafah, we already evacuated about 1 million non-combatant residents, and despite our utmost efforts not to harm non-combatants, something unfortunately went tragically wrong. We are investigating the incident and will reach conclusions because this is our policy.
Washington has been reiterating its stance on Israel's Rafah operation since last year. Even when Washington's top diplomat visited Israel this year, US was adamant about its red line for Israeli operations in Rafah. However, at the moment, US maintains that recent deaths in Rafah will not impact its policy towards Israel.
We still don't believe that a major ground operation in Rafah is warranted. We still don't want to see the Israelis, as we say, smash into Rafah with large units over large pieces of territory. We still believe that, and we haven't seen that at this point. But we're going to be watching this, of course, very, very closely.
IDF on Friday confirmed for the first time that it is operating in the center of Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. It said 2 soldiers were killed in the fighting as their ground operation toll climbed to 294. Amid the raging battle, Hamas said it is ready for a complete agreement if Israel stops the war. The militant group has told the mediators it will not take part in more negotiations during ongoing aggression. But it is ready for a complete agreement, including an exchange of hostages and prisoners if Israel stops the war. As fierce street fighting and Israeli bombardments continue in Rafah, hundreds of thousands of civilians remain caught in the war zone with nowhere to flee.
Amid the ongoing war in Gaza, Republican former U.S. contender Nikki Haley visited Israel. Her actions evoked global criticism. She signed off Israeli artillery designated for Lebanon and Gaza. Here's a report about her trip and the criticism.
Former U.S. presidential candidate and ambassador to the United States, Nikki Haley, is getting flack for her trip to Israel. On May 27th, the former South Carolina governor visited the sites of the October 7th Hamas attack. Haley was touring the Nova Music Festival site, where scores of partygoers had been killed and kidnapped on that fateful day. Haley was accompanied by Danny Danon, a member of Netanyahu's Likud party in the Knesset. Danon had been the Israeli ambassador to the UN when Donald Trump was the president of the United States. Right after the trip, Danny Danon took to X and posted some images. One of them showed Nikki Haley crouching down in front of a pallet of Israeli shells and writing an inscription that read, "Finish them. America loves Israel." Haley's message drew a backlash from across the globe. Former executive director of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, expressed his dismay on X. Later addressing journalists in the Israeli town of Sderot, Haley said, "The international moves to stop the war in Gaza and recognize a Palestinian state had just emboldened the Hamas group in the enclave."
And for all those countries who decided to recognize a Palestinian state, do you know what that felt like here in Israel? You just gave credit to Hamas and all that they did. For all those looking at the ICC and ICJ, right before we landed, there were strikes in Tel Aviv. Why? Because the ICC and ICJ just emboldened Hamas. They just gave them everything they needed to know. And when the friends of Israel back off, the terrorists move in.
Haley's shell signing comes at a time when Israel is pounding Gaza's Rafah city. The Republican leaders' ironclad support for Israel also comes at a time when the Israeli strikes burnt down a Palestinian encampment in southern Gaza City. Haley's shell signing also recalled a similar distressing incident in the year 2006 when Israel and Lebanon were at war. An explosive image resurfaced around that time, showing Israeli children writing on missiles bound for targets in Lebanon. These images show children drawing Israeli flags on shells. According to a Greek blogger, the inscriptions on these munitions read, "From the children of Israel to the children of Lebanon, with love." It was a key moment that sparked outrage in the Israel-Lebanon conflict. The armies of Lebanon and Israel have not fought a conventional war since 1948. The prospect of a full-scale war between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah is painful to contemplate on both sides of the border. But some see it as an inevitable fallout due to Israel's ongoing war against Hamas in Gaza.
And now it is time to talk about Syria. The recent months of war and tragedy in the region may have overshadowed the decade-long civil war in Syria and the humanitarian crisis, but it came back to the spotlight recently after the European Union nations spoke about it and designated a conference in Brussels to discuss future of Syria and the refugees. We tell you more in this report.
Syria is crumbling, but its fate overshadowed. The aftershocks of a decade-long civil war still persist. The region continues to remain unstable, with sporadic strikes and crossfires. Many factions within Syria are still fighting Bashar al-Assad's regime. While the Syrian president has been welcomed back into the diplomatic fold, global leaders remain divided over Assad's grasp on power and a grave humanitarian crisis in the West Asian country. The European Union held a crucial conference on Syria. Its aim to ensure that the crisis-ridden nation and its neighbors are not forgotten by the international community. Following a meet in Brussels, the European Union has pledged over 2.2 billion euros for the year 2024 and 2025. The aid will provide assistance to Syrians inside Syria and the thousands who fled to the neighboring countries of Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq. For nations who took in thousands fleeing Syrians, the burden is beginning to take a toll. And the aid comes at a crucial time for the refugees. Human rights groups at the Brussels conference highlighted the importance of the funds going into the right hands. Their concern comes amid crackdown on Syrian refugees in several countries, especially Lebanon. Syrians in Lebanon are facing a crisis of their own. Authorities are now searching their homes and forcibly deporting those who entered the country illegally. The refugees are also facing an increasing sense of alienation amongst locals. Employers have been urged to stop hiring Syrians for menial jobs. Municipalities have issued new curfews and even evicted a few Syrian tenants.
The intelligence camp came at 5 a.m. They entered respectfully. They did not hurt anyone. If you came in legally, they did not talk to you. If your residency ran out, they did not talk to you. They only took the ones who came in illegally. They took these men and put them on the side and took them to Ebla. From Ebla, they deported them immediately. They gave them to the Syrian army.
Lebanon remains home to the largest refugee population per capita in the world. The country hosts roughly 1.5 million Syrians. But 13 years after giving a new lease of life to refugees, Lebanon is struggling to cope with an economic meltdown. With life and livelihood for Lebanese nationals at risk and a simmering war on its borders, locals and political classes are beginning to agree on one thing: Syrians must be sent home.
This money that the European Union is sending, let them send to Syria. These 1 billion euros that are coming, send them to Syria with love. See the crimes that are taking place. They are threatening me and threatening you and everyone.
The rising sentiment against Syrian refugees has left many in Lebanon looking for an answer to a complicated question. How do thousands return to their war-ravaged country until it is safe again?
On May 21st, Syria announced that Syria's First Lady, Asma al-Assad, has been diagnosed with leukemia, blood cancer. Now, it is not al-Assad's first battle with a deadly disease. She was able to defeat breast cancer previously, and she is now seeking to do the same. This was in her message. Now, Asma al-Assad, the former banker, the British-born banker, and the diplomatic face of Syria, has more to her role than just a simple First Lady. In the next report, we tell you more.
وأنا هاخوض هالمعركة متسلحة بالإيمان والثقة المطلقة برب العالمين وبدعائكم ومحبتكم. بشوفكن عن قريب.
Syria's First Lady Asma al-Assad has been diagnosed with leukemia. 5 years ago, she had recovered from breast cancer. The Syrian presidency says the First Lady will have specialized treatment. One of these measures will need her to withdraw from all direct engagements, which has raised the question, how will Syria fare if its First Lady is in quarantine? The question is neither unusual nor surprising. That is because the 48-year-old wife of President Bashar al-Assad, unlike other traditional First Ladies who play a behind-the-scene role, is an active presence in Syria's diplomacy. Ever since the Syrian crisis began in 2011, the British-born former investment banker has taken on the public role of leading philanthropic efforts and meeting families of soldiers killed in the ongoing battle. The First Lady also runs the Syria Trust for Development, a large umbrella NGO that assists many aid and developmental operations across Syria. During the holy month of Ramadan this year, the First Lady also had an open dialogue with humanitarian organizations and charitable associations in Syria. She stressed this year's Ramadan was different due to the ongoing regional conflict. Last year, she accompanied her husband, President Bashar al-Assad, to the United Arab Emirates, her first known official trip abroad with him since 2011. She met Sheikha Fatima bin Mubarak, the Emirati president's mother, during a trip seen as a signal of her growing role in public affairs. She even attended the 19th opening ceremony of the Asian Games in China last year. Accompanying the Syrian president, the trip hit an important note in Syria and China's diplomatic ties. Also, unlike other First Ladies, Asma al-Assad is the face of modernity in her country of Syria. Public discourse being such a huge part of her life, she has the best wishes and prayers of her people in fighting her battle and continuing serving the Arab nation.
And now let's go to the Gulf part of West Asia, to the United Arab Emirates. Students of the UAE were able to set a new Guinness World Record. They were able to make the largest solar bulb light in a display in Dubai. Now, these solar lanterns are set to be sent to the Philippines, where they will be used in rural areas that have no access to electricity. Our next report tells you more about this.
record title. They were set 2,000 light bulbs, which had to stay lit for 5 minutes. They achieved 3,000, which is incredible. And what's really nice about a record like this is it has a message. It's about sustainability, and it's about highlighting communities which don't have electricity. So it's a record for a cause, which we absolutely love at Guinness World Records.
That's a wrap. That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, always bringing you the most recent updates, news and ground reports from the world's most volatile region, West Asia. I am your host, Radi Francis, signing off from Beirut, Lebanon. For more global news, keep on watching WION World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Less than 2 weeks ago, he claimed his maiden golfing major. Xander Schauffele speaks exclusively to WION on his Valhalla triumph.
It's an amazing feeling. It's waking up the last couple of weeks have been incredible.
Schauffele is also the reigning Olympic champion and is geared up to defend his gold medal in a few months at the Paris Games.
I'm very excited and honored to be able to qualify back and compete in Paris, and there'll be a lot of pressure.
The state of professional golf, the tragic death of Grayson Murray, and more. Watch that interview with world number 2 golf's Xander Schauffele today on WION World of Sport at these times.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION Dispatch with me, Bhairavi Singh. A lot lined up on the show, including the elections in South Africa, and has the tide finally turned against the ANC? We'll get you the latest details. Let's get you the headlines first. The ruling African National Congress Party is in the lead with over 60% of the votes counted in South Africa, but with no clear mandate, who will the ANC ally with to form the government? US President Joe Biden says Ukraine can use American weapons for limited strikes on Russia after Moscow made several advances in key regions of Ukraine. Russia reacts to the US court verdict on Donald Trump, calling the decision to convict the former US president an attempt to eliminate a political rival. The IDF confirms for the first time that it is operating in the center of Rafah, calling the offensive against Hamas precise and intelligence-based. The Chinese Defense Minister and the United States Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin meet in Singapore, discuss issues including the Philippines, the war between Russia and Ukraine, and Taiwan. India's GDP grows at 7.8% in the fourth quarter of the fiscal year 2023-24. The full fiscal year real GDP growth provisionally stands at 8.2%. The IMD forecasts heatwave conditions for 10 states, including regions from the northwest and central India. Moreover, the southwest monsoon has set in over Kerala and a few northeastern states. First up, the counting of votes continues for a second day in South Africa in what many have termed as a very crucial election for the Rainbow Nation. Final results of the polls are expected by Sunday.
With over half the ballots counted and initial results coming in, the ruling African National Congress has maintained its lead with just over 42% of the national vote 2 days after the country voted in the national elections. Now, according to the latest updates from the Election Commission, the Democratic Alliance, the country's principal opposition party, is currently in the second place, followed by the MK party, which is a new party led by the former President Jacob Zuma, and the EFF, which is currently the third biggest party in parliament. While all eyes are on the vote counting, let's listen into what voters on the ground have to say about their expectations in South Africa's political landscape.
ANC ke na le tshepo e kgolo ka yona. If no go kgonega ba re mokgatlo wa o nyala nna nka be ke nyala ANC.
For MK because I started working while Jacob Zuma was the president, and when Jacob Zuma was still a president, everything here actually in South Africa, fuels, even, what can I say, even market, everything that is market related, actually, everyone was able we were able to afford petrols, and yeah. Because now everything actually is going up.
The ANC used to be the political party that has been there for the black majority, or we thought it's there for the black majority, by the way, only to find out that they are not there. Many of my mentors or the people that I've been looking up to, they are actually the ANC comrades. However, when times goes on, I had to realize that no, these guys, they actually feeling comfortable now. They are no longer fighting for the interest of the people who put them there.
Now, early trends also reveal that the ANC might secure less than 50% of the electoral mandate, despite the party winning every national election since a landmark 1994 vote that ended apartheid and brought Nelson Mandela to power. Analysts speculate President Cyril Ramaphosa's party might be forced to make a deal with one or more other parties to govern. Many fear a coalition situation could lead to unprecedented political volatility in the coming weeks or months. And for the very latest on this, our correspondent Calden Ongwu is now joining us live from Johannesburg. She is present at the Result Operating Centre in Johannesburg. And Calden, now the results are still trickling in, even though the ANC is in a lead. The majority it's short of the majority, obviously. You've been speaking to different stakeholders, different parties. What sort of coalition, government, or if at all, can come up, and what are some of the predictions coming in?
Well, here, Barabi, at the Results Operating Centre, it's quite a busy day today. In fact, many leaders from various political parties are making their way here. Earlier in the day, I spoke to John Steenhuisen, who's the leader of the main opposition party, saying they're not going to rule out any coalition at this given point of time. They're just waiting until the results hit that final 100%. But they said their first preference would obviously go to first consulting with the multi-charter that they've signed, DA, along with the other 10 other parties. Also, ANC saying at this given point of time, they haven't started talking to anyone, but take it with a pinch of salt, because we see many leaders here actually from various political parties. They're meeting with each other, they're greeting each other, they are talking. Let's just hope they're talking work, because we've seen this day has been very busy. But CSIR's latest prediction today actually shocked everyone. They've lowered the prediction of ANC's support to 40.5%. So ANC is really in trouble. But speaking to some of the ANC officials here, they say they are confident that they can reach at least 45%. In fact, they're saying that from the ANC officials say that they had initially estimated to get 36%. These numbers that you're seeing on board, they say this is actually quite good for them. But the main important part is that everybody's been talking, whether it's rumors or not, but they're talking that the ANC has to go back to the boardroom. They're talking about